She doesn't belong here." That's what the flight attendant whispered, just loud enough for Naomi to hear. The cabin was still, tense. Overhead bins slammed shut, seatbelts clicked into place, tray tables snapped up. A ritual of routine, except for the cold, sharp stare cutting through it all. The woman in uniform stood just inches away, her expression unreadable. Professional, but not kind. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I need to see your boarding pass again." Her voice was flat. No smile, no warmth, just suspicion wrapped in formality. Naomi looked up slowly, calm, controlled. She handed over the ticket without a word. Seat 3A, first class. And in that moment, Naomi had no idea this wasn't just about a boarding pass, or a seating mistake, or a petty misunderstanding. Number this was about to become something much, much bigger. The plane had barely begun boarding when Naomi stepped into the cabin. She didn't just walk in, she arrived. Every movement radiated quiet power. Her beige pantsuit hugged her tall figure with the elegance of someone who was used to being watched, but never needed to beg for attention. Her deep brown skin glowed under the soft cabin lights, and a single gold pin on her lapel shimmered with every step she took, subtle, yet impossible to miss. As she entered, she offered a warm nod to the flight attendant at the door, then glided through the aisle with the grace of someone who knew exactly where she belonged. Passengers turned, pretending not to stare. Yet they did. First class was never short of important people, but there was something about her, something different, something that made some people uncomfortable, though they'd never say it out loud. Naomi noticed it immediately, the double takes, the barely concealed glances, the tight-lipped expressions. It wasn't just curiosity. It was that question, unspoken, but loud. What is she doing here? Seat 3, A window, premium space, premium view. She placed her leather tote in the overhead bin with careful ease, then sank into her seat like it was a throne built for her. Calm, composed, focused. She opened her tablet, tapped a few times, and began scrolling through what looked like internal reports, charts, timelines, confidential memos. Her mind was already elsewhere, but the moment wouldn't let her be. That's when she felt it. Not a noise, not a word, just a shift, a ripple in the air, like static before a storm. She looked up, and at first saw nothing unusual. But then, through the thin gap in the first-class curtain, she noticed a figure standing perfectly still, watching her. Too still, too long. Her eyes flicked to the name tag, L. Baxter. The woman didn't smile, didn't move, just stared. Naomi gave a soft nod, trying to break the moment with courtesy. It didn't work. The attendant's eyes didn't soften. Instead, they narrowed. Just a fraction. Enough to be felt. Enough to say what her mouth didn't. Naomi returned to her screen, forcing herself to focus, but her fingers slowed on the tablet. That look, she knew that look. She'd seen it in boardrooms, in elevators, in luxury hotels. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't protocol. It was the kind of gaze that asked, "Are you lost?" The kind that searched for a reason to question, to challenge, to doubt. Because deep down, some people still couldn't believe that a black woman belonged in seat 3A. Seconds later, the curtain parted. Lena stepped into the first-class cabin, and the energy followed her like a cold draft. She didn't greet the other passengers. Her eyes locked on Naomi, only Naomi, and she approached with calculated precision. The type of walk that wasn't rushed, but wasn't casual either. The kind that made sure you knew she was coming. "Excuse me, ma'am," Lena said, voice perfectly flat with a smile that never reached her eyes. "May I see your boarding pass?" Naomi looked up, calm. Not surprised, not defensive, just composed, like someone who had dealt with this before. "Of course," she said, and handed it over without hesitation. Lena scanned the pass with practiced fingers, then paused. "This is for seat 3A?" she asked, as if the printed text could lie. Naomi nodded once, her voice clear. Yes, that's correct. For a split second, Lena's mask slipped. Something passed through her eyes. Confusion, number disapproval. As if the answer confirmed something she didn't want to accept. She gave the pass back, reluctantly. No problem, she muttered, then turned away. But Naomi knew this wasn't over. And she was right. Because Lena wasn't done. Not even close. So before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next? You won't want to miss it. Lena walked past once, then again, and then a third time. Each pass slower, more deliberate. Her eyes kept returning to seat 3A, like a radar locked onto a target it didn't expect to find there. Naomi felt the weight of it, the scrutiny, the suspicion wrapped in the thin disguise of protocol. But she'd seen this before. This wasn't about a boarding pass. This was about her, a black woman in first class. She looked up, her expression calm but firm, and offered a polite smile. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with clarity. Lena didn't return the smile, not even close. "I need to verify your ticket," she said, cold and clipped, as if the request were routine, when both of them knew it wasn't. Not here. Not now. Without hesitation, Naomi reached into the side pocket of her bag and handed over the same boarding pass. The same one she'd already shown. The same one Lena had already held. But this time, Lena studied it like it couldn't possibly be real. She held it like it was a forgery. A mistake. A threat to the order she believed in. "This can't be right," Lena muttered, her tone sharpening. "Are you sure this is your seat?" Naomi's voice didn't flinch. "Yes, I booked it myself, weeks ago." There was a pause. Not the kind that invites understanding, the kind that builds a wall, reinforced by bias, cemented by prejudice. Lena glanced around, scanning the cabin like she was hoping someone, anyone, might nod in silent agreement. Someone to validate what she already believed. "A woman like you doesn't belong in seat 3A. And then came the line, the one that cut the air clean. "I'll need to move you to economy. There's been a mix-up." Naomi blinked. Once. "Excuse me?" Her voice was still steady, but her mind was racing, cataloging every detail, every word. She wasn't just thinking. She was documenting. Around them, the air shifted. Heads turned, first subtly, then openly. The kind of moment people feel deep in their bones, even if they pretend not to. That gut-deep knowing. Something wrong is happening here. "I said," Lena repeated, louder this time, "you need to come with me." The words weren't loud, but they landed like thunder. Naomi inhaled. Slow. Measured. Then she stood. Her movements smooth, intentional, carrying the weight of every black woman who's ever been asked to prove she belongs. She gathered her bag, closed her tablet, not a single word spoken. But her silence roared. She followed Lena down the narrow aisle, each step echoing with humiliation she refused to carry. The walk to the back of the plane drew every eye like a spotlight, some filled with pity, others with judgment, none with action. Row 29, middle seat, cramped, no window, no space, exactly where Lena thought she belonged. Naomi sat down, not defeated, not broken, just watching. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved quickly, deliberately, her face unreadable. A message appeared on screen. "It's happening. Proceed." She hit send, and then she smiled, just a little, because this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. They moved her to the back of the plane. They thought they'd humiliated her. But Naomi? She was 10 steps ahead. Before we reveal what comes next, hit that subscribe button. Because the real story, it's just getting started. In the front cabin, Lena moved with an air of quiet triumph. The way she poured champagne into tall glasses, her smile slightly wider than before, the relaxed swing in her step, it all told the same story. She believed the matter was handled. The problem, as she saw it, had been removed. She had fixed first class, but what Lena didn't know was that the call had already gone through. She didn't know that somewhere hundreds of miles away phones were ringing, that inboxes were lighting up, that protocols reserved for emergencies or for executives had been triggered. She didn't know the message had been received, and she definitely didn't know who Naomi really was. In the cramped back row, Naomi sat like someone waiting for a train that was already on its way, calm, unbothered. Her fingers had stopped typing. Her phone was now at her ear. She was speaking in hushed tones, firm and precise. No need to delay departure, she said. Just follow the plan. And yes, make sure it's logged. A younger flight attendant approached from the aisle, eyes uncertain. He looked at Naomi, as if sensing the storm underneath her stillness. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice hesitant but sincere. Naomi turned to him, her expression softening. She smiled, a calm, knowing kind of smile. "It will be," she said. "Very soon." 10 minutes passed. Then came the sound, a soft crackle from the overhead speaker. The intercom buzzed, interrupting the murmurs and page flipping and pre-flight tension. "Could Flight Attendant Lena Baxter please report to the galley immediately?" The voice was official, neutral, but underneath that professional tone, something felt off, controlled. Lena glanced up, surprised. She looked around as if trying to decode the message. Then, adjusting her vest and brushing her skirt smooth, she made her way toward the back galley with clipped steps. She didn't know what to expect. What she found was a male crew member waiting with a cordless satellite phone in hand. "It's for you," he said simply. "Corporate office." Lena took the phone slowly, her brow furrowed. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep her voice level. "Miss Baxter," came a calm, measured voice on the other end. "We've received a formal report of misconduct on Flight 728. It involves your behavior toward a passenger during boarding." Lena's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She swallowed hard. "A senior executive is currently on board. Effective immediately, you are to refrain from engaging with any passengers unless directly instructed." "Executive?" Lena asked, barely above a whisper. "Yes," the voice replied, with the cool confidence of someone who already knew every detail. "She's seated in 23C. Her name is Naomi Daniels." Time froze. The color drained from Lena's face. The phone trembled slightly in her hand. Naomi Daniels. The woman she had pulled from first class. The woman she assumed didn't belong. The woman whose presence she tried to erase quietly, now stood at the center of a corporate storm. Lena looked up, her eyes wide, her world tilting. And in seat 23C, Naomi waited, still, composed, powerful, because the real turbulence was just beginning. Lena's legs felt like stone as she stepped back into the cabin. Her heels no longer clicked with confidence. They barely touched the floor, like her body had forgotten how to move. Each step toward row 23 felt longer than the last, as if the aisle itself was stretching to delay the inevitable. Passengers glanced up, sensing something was wrong. They couldn't hear the call she'd just taken, but they could see it on her face. The pale skin, the trembling lips, the way her eyes darted like a cornered animal. She turned the corner at row 23, and Naomi was already looking at her. Her gaze was calm. Director. She hadn't moved. She hadn't flinched, the same poise she carried when she was wrongly relocated. She wore now like armor. A faint smile curved the edge of her lips. Not smug, not cruel, just knowing. Then Lena saw it. That gold pin on Naomi's collar. The one she had barely glanced at earlier. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol. Recognition crashed into Lena like a tidal wave. That pin was exclusive, issued only to board-level executives. The kind of thing you see once in a career, if ever. The kind of rank that doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. The woman she humiliated. The woman she dismissed. The woman she pulled from first class like she didn't belong. She was her superior, no, worse, her boss's boss. head of international operations, the highest-ranking executive to ever fly undercover, a corporate legend. Whispers of Naomi Daniels had floated through training manuals and leadership conferences like myth. No one imagined she'd ever fly incognito, and yet, here she was, seat 23C, watching, evaluating. Lena opened her mouth, desperation catching in her throat. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to beg, but Naomi raised a single hand, a subtle gesture, controlled, dismissive. "Not now," she said quietly. Her voice held no anger, no heat, just weight, finality. Then she turned her gaze back to her tablet, flipping the page with surgical calm, like the interruption had been no more significant than a passing cloud. Lena stood frozen. The air around her thickened, like the pressure inside the cabin had doubled. Her chest tightened. Her thoughts spun in freefall. She was trapped, 30,000 feet in the air, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, surrounded by strangers. And one woman who held her entire future between the lines of a report she hadn't written yet. Her hands began to tremble. She didn't just make a mistake. She had made the mistake. The kind that doesn't go away with an apology. The kind that follows you down. Through your reputation, through your file, through every missed opportunity that will quietly close in the years to come. And still, Naomi read in silence. Because some horror stories don't need raised voices, just the sound of your own heartbeat when you realize what you've done. They landed in silence. No one spoke much during descent. The usual shuffle of bags and seatbelts felt heavier, as if the air itself carried the weight of what had happened. Naomi didn't flinch at the captain's announcement. She didn't rush to stand or glance at her phone. She simply closed her tablet, adjusted the gold pin on her collar, and waited. She wasn't just waiting to leave the plane. She was letting the silence speak. When the doors opened, she rose with quiet authority. Not a single passenger blocked her path. She walked down the aisle that had once been a corridor of humiliation, now transformed into a runway of reclamation. Heads turned, some eyes lowered. Others followed her in silent recognition, uncertain of all the details, but absolutely sure they'd witnessed something bigger than a seat dispute. This wasn't about a boarding pass. It never was. It was about what people see when they look at a black woman in a place they think she doesn't belong. Lena stood near the galley, stiff and pale, her hands folded too tightly in front of her. But her eyes, those same eyes that once narrowed in suspicion, now wavered. Naomi paused briefly at the exit. She turned, not with malice, not with vengeance, but with a look so calm, so unwavering, it cut deeper than any reprimand ever could. A single glance over her shoulder, and then that smile. Quiet, controlled, devastating. It said everything. I saw you. I know what this was. And I'm still deciding what happens next. Naomi stepped off the plane, and just before the screen fades to black, her voice echoes, soft, like a truth the audience was lucky to catch. And if you want to know what Naomi does next, subscribe, because turbulence is just the start of the storm. Some turbulence is necessary. Fade to black.